The way I've structured my talk is I've divided it into 4 parts. It's more of what we can do at individual level because it all gets driven by us. Part 1 of my talk, which is all about how do you connect with the people, right? As you begin your professional journey, I took an analogy from a movie, 1971, Anand, where it talks about every individual is a receiver as well as a transmitter. And as I was coming down here, I thought there will be a lot of younger audience who might not be able to connect to the example of Anand, the movie. So then came in the other example of an Uber app. It's exactly the same. We as individuals, receivers and transmitters are like, when you book your Uber app, it takes your signal to 5 drivers in the vicinity. And then one of the driver takes it. So we are the transmitter and they are the receivers. Similarly, as humans, we are the transmitters as well as receivers. When you start your journey, what you need to do is keep your receiving mode on so that more and more transmitters can get connected to you. Because they can get connected to either you or somebody else. So how do they find you? By just keeping your receiving mode on. And that's one part of it. The second important part of it is that don't let some questions creep into your mind. When you have the receiving mode on and one such a transmitter connects to you, the first thought comes to our mind is, what does the transmitter gain out of it? Keep this thought out. The second thought that comes is, what do I gain out of it? I would suggest keep this thought also out. The thought that should come to our mind, do we lose anything by connecting to this transmitter? If we don't, just get connected to the transmitter. And that's where the journey begins. Another analogy I'll bring in, and it's not because I am in Bombay and I come from Delhi, because I've observed the Delhi auto rickshaw guys and the Bombay auto rickshaw guys in the pre-Uber times. The difference between the Delhi auto rickshaw guy and the Bombay auto rickshaw guy was, Bombay auto rickshaw guy never refused any transmitter that got connected to head. He took it as a receiver and kept on moving every moment of the day. Whereas the Delhi auto rickshaw guy got a transmission, rejected it, got another transmission, rejected it, and then picked up one which he thought would maximize his gains. And my analogy said it was the Mumbai auto rickshaw guy or the Bombay auto rickshaw guy, as it was then known, who earned much more than the Delhi auto rickshaw guy. So you gain a lot more by connecting with people, by being a receiver, by letting that only question remain in your mind, do I lose anything? If I don't, then I stand to gain. And I'll take it forward with 4 such examples. There were many transmitters who got attached to my life. When I started my career, and a lot of people don't know, I started my career at the lowest possible level in a finance function, but that too also in a small division within an organization. So not even in the finance department of an organization. And my sole responsibility was to keep a track of the payments that came in the form of check and cash and deposit them into the bank. And there I can get connected to my first transmitter, who was in the main finance function, and his duties were also to go to bank, and he says, let's connect. And the thought that came to mind, do I lose anything? Because I didn't gain anything, but I didn't lose anything. I got connected to him. And what it did to me was, he connected me to my second transmitter. Now, my second transmitter was in the main finance department. This guy had all good things for me. What he did was, he not only showed me a path which could take me to the finance department, he also told me who would help me in getting in there. Using both of these, I reached that department. And then the best thing that he did for me was, he connected me to my third transmitter. And with a valuable piece of advice, that this transmitter doesn't transmit. So you have to keep your receiving mode on, and you have to find ways of taking it from him, because he's not in transmitting mode. That advice played wonders for me. I took that advice and I learned the most from this gentleman who did not transmit according to him, but I received because I was there to gain from receiving. And that's where my journey began. That's where my journey started. That's how I moved forward in my life. I had many such transmitters, and that's why I'm blessed. And I reached Scholastic. Then what happened was something phenomenal. And that's the story of the fourth transmitter. As I said, there were many such transmitters, but this was one of the most important transmitters. This was the person who very carefully egged me on to do a little bit more without me realizing it. And I realized that I always thought that I was cut out for finance. Whereas she realized that I could do more before even I realizing it. She kept on egging me on trying something more. I kept on doing something more. And not just in terms of taking more responsibilities, she also egged me on by just asking me a simple question: do you want to do something more? That took me to my journey of the executive MBA. So that's how important these connections are. That's how important it is to be in the receiving mode. And that's how important it is to find and connect to the right transmitter. And remember, the only way you can get connected to more and more transmitters is just have this one question in your mind: do I lose anything by connecting? If not, this is a gain, gain, and gain. So that was part one of my story. Part two. Part two is about building bridges with your own self, knowing yourself much better. And I think that comes by three things, as I say: belief, conviction, and confidence. Belief in the skills that you have. Confidence in what you do or what you present to the world. So conviction in what you do and what you present to the world, and confidence that with your belief and your conviction, you can take it forward. And I think that's something that is very, very important. And I learned this from my dad, who's not a high school graduate, but I think he was a doctorate in life. And that's where I got this whole trick of belief, conviction, and confidence. Applied that, moved forward, and that takes me to my third part. Because the second part, once you have the belief, conviction, and confidence, is when you start going more into transmitting mode, but not for others, for your own self, is making yourself redundant. And that can be done at every level. I once attended Stephen Covey's session, and one of the habits of Stephen Covey, it says, it's all about your circle of influence. And it talks about controllables and uncontrollables. We all believe that there is some part that we control and some part somebody else control. But to me, if you want to go up in your life, it's more in your control than in anybody else's control. Because if you keep making yourself redundant, you are ready for the next. It's the insecurity in our minds which makes us feel that we can't leave this what we have in our hand. And that's what stops our connections. But the moment you are able to understand that you can go to the next level when you get somebody ready for your own level, that's where you take the onus in your hand and you increase your circle of influence. That was my journey. And in this part three, the example that comes to my mind is that, when my fourth transmitter that I talked about, when she was egging me on to take more responsibility, the first thing that I did was I got a manager to manage the finance department so that I was not devoting my time into the finance department. I was spending my time in the unknown rather than known. And that took my journey to a very different level. That gave me the purpose of my life. That brought me to where I am today, which I had not thought of, but was thought of by the fourth transmitter. That brings me to the fourth part, and that's whichever level you reach to, wherever you are standing, whichever part of journey of your success you are in, don't lose your connect to the bottom. Because it's your connect to the bottom that yields the maximum results. It's the foot soldiers who take you forward. It's not the things we feel that, it's in the boardroom that we decide what's the problem and what's the solution. The best people to know what the problem is are the foot soldiers. And the best people to recommend you a solution which is doable and easy to implement are the foot soldiers. Again, example, we started with one of the new things initiatives, and we had a box that we were supplying. It had 8 different components. As we started supplying those boxes, we started getting complaints about one or the other item missing. And we were grappling to find how do we solve this problem. This was supplied by a third-party vendor. And it was our warehouse team who not only understood the problem the best, but also came up with the solution and told us, let's weigh the box which has got all the 8 items, check the weight with each item removed. As these supplies come in, we'll just weigh and put it what is missing, and the vendor can come and solve it. It was such an easy solution, but could have only come from foot soldiers. Cannot be decided in the boardroom. So don't lose your connector. Don't lose your bridges that you make over the years just because you are in a different position now. So these are the 4 parts. And mind you, these are not mutually exclusive. They don't come in any particular order. They go on simultaneously, sometimes all 4 of them together, sometimes 3 of them together. And while I have used the analogy of a professional side, these are all the stages that you can apply into your personal life to create bridges there and create bridges here. Thank you.